Welcome to Catholic Champion. Today in America, Catholics are champions, and we're going to talk about the historic election last night, which took place. I'm your host, John Yep, and my friend and co-host, Michael Hichborn. We'll see you in a sec. The best way to introduce this show, talking about the election and the Catholic effect on it, is to go right to the moment where it became clear to America that President Trump would be our 47th president. Play clip one.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome President-elect Donald J. Trump, First Lady Melania Trump, and the Trump family, accompanied by Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, Second Lady Usha Vance, along with friends and campaign staff.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know my dream. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston, and New York to LA, where there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the
Thank you very much. Wow.
The energy in that room was absolutely incredible. Both Michael and I have been in that room there in Mar-a-Lago, the big ballroom. We know what that's like. We had our Catholic Prayer for Trump back there in March, and, decided to play the beginning of that speech right here at the start of our show, just to put you all in the moment. It was an incredible, special moment for America. This transcends politics in a lot of ways. Michael, were you up? Did you fall asleep? Did you go to bed before he won?
Can I just say, good heavens, Baron Trump is a tall man.
He is one tall man. He absolutely is.
A whole head over everyone else, and Trump is not a short man. That was amazing. Did I fall asleep? I was awake when the announcement was made, when PA was called. I stayed up and I waited for Trump to speak, and I happened to be in bed, and my wife was there, and our 1-year-old was in the bed with us, and so he was flopping around in the bed. So I had the bed sheets pulled up over my head, and I'm sitting there watching him.
walking around for? Just nervous about the results? Was he waiting for Michigan to come in before he go
I
to sleep?
think he was waiting for Michigan. He was antsy about Michigan.
Got it.
But I had my bed sheets pulled over my head, and I'm sitting there watching on my phone. And I was like, I'm just going to listen. So I put in an earpiece and I put the phone over on just upside down. And then the next thing I know, I hear all this cheering. So an hour later, I fell asleep. And an hour later, I hear Lynn Greenwood singing, "Proud to be an American." And then I pulled the phone up and I started watching some of the speech, and I was like, okay, I'll just listen. And then I fell asleep again. But it was pretty incredible what I did catch.
Full disclosure, I'm a tired dad. I fell asleep around 11 o'clock, but woke up around 2 a.m. and my phone had been blown up from messages from all over the country, and people understanding what had happened, the significance, and could not get back to sleep till 4:30, and then we were up a couple hours later. So, but it was funny because our Catholics got the team. This was not even planned. If you look at our social media, the times we posted, we had different team members who just fell asleep at different times and woke up at different times in the night. So we had a continuous coverage of this stuff on our social media. Wasn't even planned, but look how that happened. So incredible moment, historic night. This is not just your normal election. It is truly historic. Would you agree, Michael?
Oh, without a doubt, because what we're looking at now is not only the very first presidency to that didn't have concomitant or I'm sorry, consecutive presidencies since I think it was Grover Cleveland.
1892, last one.
Yeah.
Grover Cleveland, that's right.
Yeah, I think so. Grover Cleveland was the last one, and now we've got another one. So yeah, it's absolutely historic. It's over 100 years ago since the last time that's happened.
I mean, if that's like the smallest reason for being a smash hit.
I'm being coy. Yeah, no. The reason it's historic is because we were able to stop what was very definitely going to be a communist takeover of this country.
Exactly.
That's why it's historic. Kamala Harris was not just another candidate. She was someone who was appointed. She was a poison pill that was put into the Biden ticket at the very beginning. The idea was from that point forward that she would be the continuation of what Obama had started. You know, Biden was always a puppet of Obama anyway, but she was the one who was going to be implementing the full plan, and she got stopped. She got stopped hard. So this was historic because of what God allowed us to prevent from happening.
Absolutely, 100%. We're going to get into that. It was it was a firm rebuttal of communism. It's almost you could compare it in some ways to the 1947 election in Italy post World War II, when thanks be to God, Pope Pius XII had a strong hand in that. He came out very much against the Communist Party, was trying to take over Italy, which would have been disastrous for the church. Imagine Italy completely surrounded, or the Vatican surrounded in Italy by this communist regime. It was the Iron Curtain trying to descend there. And it was a firm rebuttal of that in 1947. Very similar, very, very similar here in what happened last night. That we stopped them dead in their tracks. So how did it happen? So Michael and I kind of, before the show, we decided, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to just pick 3 reasons. I don't know his reasons yet, and vice versa, right? About why we think President Trump had that huge victory last night. So we're going to just trade off really fast. Michael, give us reason number 1 that you think, in your estimation, why this was a success.
Okay, my first reason is Trump's army of 230,000 poll watchers and 500 roving lawyers who were preventing shenanigans from taking place within this particular election. If it wasn't for the fact that we had so many people that were actively watching with legal backup, ready and waiting. I mean, we do know that legal backup had to come to the rescue a couple of times because there were things that were going on. There was a part where people at the polls were being told to go home because, well, they couldn't get the machines working, or maybe they couldn't get a proper procedure set. And so the lawyers jumped right in. They went right to the location. They made sure everything was working smoothly. They checked over everything, and they forced the issue to continue. There was a point in time where counting was supposed to stop in the middle of Pennsylvania at about 11 o'clock at night. Sound familiar? And the lawyers showed up and they forced the issue. They forced it to keep going. So it was the poll watchers, I think, and the roving lawyers that just absolutely dominated and would not allow any kind of steal to take place.
Really glad you mentioned that. I can't believe I did not think to put that in one of my 3 reasons, but that's absolutely essential. And that I credit those poll watchers and those lawyers would not have done their thing if it wasn't for after the 2020 election. We're not going to say it dead on clear about what happened in the 2020 election on this channel. In fact, Charlie Kirk actually lost his live stream last night with 170,000 followers. We're talking about some certain issues with the election, right? So we're not going to say that. But what happened in general terms after 2020 was people were concerned that they want to make sure that everything was fair. And so there's a big, Mike Lindell, everything that he did, people thought he was crazy, nut job, whatever. The different, the hearings that happened in Maricopa County, Rudy Giuliani, others who tried to kind of just show and push. And then just 4 years. You think about the movie Mules, right? And everything that they did to just try to bring awareness to this. We would not have had the victory last night, like you said, Michael, if it wasn't for those people. They were screaming at all of us from the rooftop that there was something that was did not smell right there in our election centers, and we were so ready. I mean, how about those lawsuits leading up? Like how fast? Like think about what was the county in Pennsylvania, which there was an issue with the machines or lines or whatever, and it was just a quick snap decision. Our lawyers are on it, and they kept it open until 10 p.m. last night. Things like that. So we were on our game. Lara Trump was just awesome and being quick, even citizen journalists as well with the video footage. There was that one attempt, I think, in Detroit. You saw that? You saw the video there? That was
yes. Yep.
The suspicious trucks arriving around 11 o'clock with license plates from California. Boom, they were on it, right? So huge. My reason number 1, put it up there, Charles. Let's see what you picture. Essentially, it's activists personified most in Charlie Kirk and Turning Point. So let me explain. In 2016, 2020, Trump, the campaign, he had a big ground game. Like actually he had field offices, right? I remember meeting with the head of the Trump campaign here in Arizona back in 2020, and they had their plan or whatever, and they had their people going door to door. By and large, that almost did not exist this time around in the 7 swing states. Okay. Yeah. What happened was you had these 501c4s like Charlie Kirk, the main one, Turning Point, who looked at the situation, looked at what the GOP had been doing for years, and understood that it wasn't working, okay? We were spending more of our time trying to convince Democrat voters to vote for our side than trying to get people who thought like us, our neighbor on the street who's got American flag out of his union, who just never ever votes, right? And just getting him to vote. So they completely changed that strategy. And the Trump campaigns basically gave it over the voter outreach, chasing down those ballots. They gave it to people like Turning Point. They were the biggest group. Okay. So Turning Point had, out of the 7 swing states, they had obviously, Wisconsin, Arizona, Carolina, but the Pennsylvania one, that was with Cliff, I'm blanking on his last name, from PHS. He was on Charlie's show last night. He ran an operation in Pennsylvania, which was unbelievable. So it was kind of groups like that. And of course, Charlie, partnered with Catholics for Catholics and said, hey, you guys, we're going to need your coalition help for chasing down ballots. And here's the Catholic data. We had an agreement with them. We shared it, and we assembled that team led by our very own Noreen Johnson, who did a fantastic job as national director to chase down 2.2 million Catholic votes in 7 swing states. So my point is, reason number 1 that I guess it's not the correct sequential order necessarily, but at least the first reason I'm giving here is because of those activists. Charlie Kirk, Cliff, Jack Posobiec, Tyler Boyer, they made it. They chased down those ballots. And you see it most specifically the fact that we won the younger vote. Did you see that, Michael? We actually,
Yeah.
the fact that we won Gen Z in some states like Michigan, honest to God, that is almost primarily because of things like what Turning Point was doing in their outreach to the students across universities. Like,
Yeah.
absolute mad respect. Yep.
I have to say this is actually a very excellent point, because one of the things that I have done throughout my career is I trace and I follow and I watch what Saul Alinsky's community organizing groups do. And one of their biggest, most effective activities is to
Author
go
of the book for newcomers, Rules for Radicals. Hillary Rodham Clinton did her thesis paper on this dude.
So what Saul Alinsky did, his whole idea was community organizing and trying to get people activated and motivated to be involved in the political process. And of course, he was doing it to negative effect because he is a Marxist and he was trying to get people to promote Marxism and promote Marxist causes. And the side of the right had always lagged in that regard because they didn't quite understand that in the modern political system, the only way that you're going to be able to have an effective campaign is by going door to door, knocking on doors, getting the locals involved and keeping people activated and motivated. So what Charlie Kirk did and what you did and what so many others who were involved in activating the Republican base and in making converts too. Charlie Kirk's going to these student centers and universities and having conversations, just general conversations. Let's just talk. What are your grievances? What are you concerned about? Why do you think Kamala Harris would make a better candidate than Donald Trump? Just having a general person-to-person conversation like that. This is what Saul Alinsky was all about, creating relationships, making sure that you're trying to draw people along with you. And I'm not saying that Charlie Kirk and all them were using Alinsky tactics, because Alinsky was also ends justifies the means and all that stuff. But what we did was effectively a form of political jujitsu, where we used what they were very good at against them. And for Charlie Kirk and you and everybody else to go and activate the base, to talk to the base, to get everybody activated, it's what the left had been very good at. And this time around, you beat them at their own game. And bravo to all of you and your team.
We took the fight to the enemy. We went on offense. Charlie did that. He sat in universities. That is what we have to do, even as Catholics. Imagine if we had Catholic priests, Catholic bishops who just probably are exist, but I'm not aware of, but just sitting up like Charlie does with a big sign that says, "Are you being brainwashed?" or similar verbiage. That's what they say. And he has hundreds and hundreds of these college kids just coming and challenging him. And like you just said, there are conversions, right? Conversions of heart, conversions of mind. It was brilliant. It wasn't just knocking doors too. It was knocking on doors is one thing, or just texting people is another thing. But it's getting that ballot, ensuring that ballot gets in their box. And I like what you said, man, because we basically copied what the Dems were already doing. They were experts at this. They were able to chase down ballots. They were able to tell, because it's public knowledge, if you received a ballot and then you received it, it's public knowledge. But once you return it, boom, it's registered on the county website. So using their influence, they were to document the data, and this really quickly. That's why a lot of us got texts, especially in swing states, which said, "Hey, we noticed you haven't voted yet, or you haven't returned your ballot yet." How the heck do they know that? It's because it's all public knowledge, and they just have to organize themselves in such a way to be able to chase those ballots down. Brilliant strategy, and so that's absolutely number one reason for me why Trump got those votes that he did, especially in Michigan. I mean, if it wasn't for Charlie in Michigan, Wisconsin, they would have lost. Trump probably would have lost. Give me your reason number two, Mike.
All right, reason number two, and I'm going to go from the from the mundane to the sublime, is that there were hundreds of thousands of prayers, masses, acts of penance that were done on behalf of Donald Trump and his campaign. I think that because this fight was not just a matter of one candidate versus another, one set of ideologies versus another, this was fundamentally a spiritual combat. We had people who were active Satanists and witches that were trying to cast spells on Donald Trump. They were also putting out their spells and their prayers and their demons, conjuring their demons on behalf of Kamala Harris. And we know this because they posted it online. They said, hey, I'm a witch. I did this and I did that. And I'm trying to, but at the same time, and again, kudos to you and your team. You organized for masses to be said for Donald Trump. We had regular rosaries for Donald Trump. You had Bishop Strickland doing patriotic rosaries for Donald Trump. All of these prayers are efficacious. They create and provide actual grace. It's not sanctifying grace. It's not, this is not saying that anybody's going to heaven because of this, but what we're doing is the application of actual grace is to ask for God's blessing and his will on behalf of our cause, to preserve us from the evil that was going to be handed down by people like Kamala Harris and her cohorts. So this spiritual combat, if it weren't for all of those prayers, all of the activism, all of the roving lawyers and poll watchers, it would have been for naught, because without that spiritual protection, what we do with our hands is effectively an empty gesture.
Brilliant. In this screenshot that you chose to illustrate that point was obviously Strickland praying the rosary. He was thrown up on War Room. That rosary was recorded last Sunday on our channels, platforms. That yesterday, out of the blue, this is like, War Room with Steve Bannon is like election central. Everyone is listening to that. Every conservative, all the poll watchers, all that, keeping up to date like that. And we didn't ask them to, but I guess they found our rosary and they're like, you know what? Let's just break coverage from everything that's happening. Just pop that rosary on. So boom, Steve's got 1 million on his Rumble channel, and he's on others as well. And that was his stream, the rosary, the Catholic rosary led by America's bishop, was streamed out across America. And I thought it was just a beautiful testament. And look, people, that is what we try to do at Catholics for Catholics. We just try to tee this up so the people of the citizens of this country can avail themselves of our precious Catholic faith. Because if they do, if they're fed from this, like you said, actual grace can come because of it. They're nourished and they're strengthened to keep on fighting. And I agree with you, Mike. That was like the way that the masses for Trump, I do believe that. I 100% believe that the masses for Trump thwarted some of those spells, right?
Yep.
And by the way, newsflash, we're going to keep the mass campaign going, okay? We'll talk about that later, but it's we have to. The man's not in office yet. He's got to get through alive, right?
Yeah.
Okay, point number 2 for me. Throw my screen up there if you could. Okay, leadership. Leadership is point number 2. And just leave that there for a second. I'm going to explain with those people. Leadership is what the virtue of leadership ultimately is what led to this in large part the election. There's Donald Trump, obviously, first and foremost, right? If people will believe words, they say words move, examples drag, in the sense of like words can move people to something, but if your example is so strong, people like Eric Salmon said, I will crawl over broken glass to vote for Donald Trump, right? After the assassination attempt. It was his leadership. It was his leadership that got people like Elon Musk. And that's almost like a subset number 2. If it was not for Elon Musk buying X, where would we be? I mean, insane. Our ability to get the message out in an effective way, not to worry about the algorithms, speak up, and the fact that Trump was able to get Elon to understand what was at stake in this country, and Elon using the power of that God-given brain of his, he went to town and made it happen. Why would you, in your estimation, Michael, would you think Elon was so attracted to President Trump? Why did he jump on board?
Well, for one thing, he recognized that the left was trying to censor everything. He knew just through experience. First of all, he saw it happening on Twitter before he bought it. He saw what the left was trying to do in terms of censorship, but he also recognized that it was Donald Trump who was saying, look, people should be allowed to have an opinion. People should be allowed to be wrong. Okay. It doesn't give you a right to perpetuate falsehood, but what it does give you a right to do is to be wrong and to say, you know what, this is what I think happened. This is what I think is going on with X, Y, or Z. People have a right to say what's on their mind, and the left was trying desperately to squash that. So that, I think that's why Elon Musk went along with this. But another thing I want to talk about is the via negativa. Okay, a lot of people talk about the path of direct evidence, but the via negativa is to say, if you look at what is not being talked about, what kind of leadership are you looking at the other side? On Donald Trump's side, you're looking at a man who has endured the worst forms of persecution for the last 4 years. Not only endured them, but continued to fight and fight and fight and to claw and to drag himself forward while saying, I'm going to continue to fight and to continue to campaign and to become the next president on top of that, because it's important. They hate me so much because they're trying to get to you. That was what he said. They're going through me to get to you. And he was using himself as a human shield on behalf of people. That's leadership. On the other side, let's look at Kamala Harris. Who is she? Nobody could really say. Even Candace Owens started discovering that her books on her own biography about her own grandmother were false. They were false. False information was in those books. You do a little bit further digging into her past. She's full of plagiarism. She's plagiarized so many things. And then she started plagiarizing Trump's campaign, copying his tactics. Trump said, I'm going to get rid of taxes on tips. So then she says, I'm going to get rid of taxes on tips. He starts putting out rallies. She's holding rallies, except the rallies are very similar. There is something about leadership that says to the left, hey, you want to copy me because you've got nothing of your own. You're not really leading. You're just following too. So she is just as much a follower, and everybody saw it. And that, I think, is the real character, the real nature of the leadership that was presented by Donald Trump. And I think that's really what you were talking about here.
As much as people have this idea that Trump it's all about himself, he's just a narcissistic kind of guy. People say that, right? I think the proof in a lot of ways is in the pudding. He won the popular vote last night. People don't like narcissistic people. Okay. Yeah. So enough people, even like Elon, he's a smart guy. He was able to see that, okay, Trump might have this exterior bravado, which kind of comes across like just all about me at times, but he was able to communicate, I'm doing this. I am serving the American people. They saw that when they tried to kill him. He got shot in the head on live television, right? He's given up his last years of his life to relax, to deal with this stuff, right? So I think people were able to discern that Trump communicated that, because that's really what's going on. And I think also the image of his family. So many just good men, Eric, Don Jr., right? Barron, Laura Trump, right? The people around him, you could just see that they love their dad, right? And it's a movement, right? It was the American looking up there was America. It's like some people could relate to, right? Which Kamala, like you said, you didn't know where you were getting. It was it was fake. It was fake. And people knew that, and they didn't show up.
Yep. Something else that should be mentioned is that, you talk about arrogance, and people get upset with arrogance and egotism. But if you look at what a leader is and who a leader is, I like to point out General George S. Patton, who was an arrogant man. He was a very self-centered man, but he was also one who had men that would crawl through glass to do what he wanted them to do. He was a natural leader. He was a solid leader. And, the arrogance, the pride, the personal understanding of their capabilities has to come along with that. Mm-hmm. Why people follow those people has to do with their accomplishments and their abilities and their willingness to actually put their own bodies on the line for their men. And that's what the nature of leadership. So for people that shy away from people who are they've got strong personalities, and they call them arrogant. They call them egotistical or megalomaniacal. But the real nature of it is that somebody who is of a choleric disposition knows what needs to be done. They're going to bark orders, and the people who really know and understand what it means to have a leader and what it means to follow, they'll follow it.
And they did with him winning the popular vote by 5 million. First time since 2004, since a Republican has won a popular vote and electoral college together. Yep. Reason number 3, what do you got for us of why Trump won last night?
Yeah, my third reason is because of the massive overreach on the part of the Democrats in pushing a hard Marxist agenda, including radical LGBT ideologies and abortion. The truth is, and every exorcist will tell you this, there comes a point when the devil overreaches. And that is exactly what happened with Kamala's campaign. She overreached to such an extent that even people who were normally Democrats, watching what she was saying in her interviews, watching what she was promoting in her literature and her ads, they said, you know what, I would normally vote Democrat, but she's nuts. She's nuts. And they saw what was going on with Trump. They, going back to your activism, you had the personal interactions with people like Charlie Kirk, who would have a normal conversation with them. And people were starting to realize, you know what? The Republicans aren't these horrible human beings that the Democrats keep telling us they are. And they're actually just kind of normal people. Maybe there's something to this. So the extreme overreach that came from the Democrat side, that came specifically from Kamala Harris, I think is really the what put Donald Trump over the edge, because then you had the defection of a bunch of Democrats over to the side of the Republicans voting for him.
What do you mean from the spiritual sense of the word overreach? You said Kamala overreached. What precisely does that mean, besides making just dumb moves?
Well, the overreach is to say, to make abortion the number one issue of her campaign. Okay. Normal people go to the grocery store. They're not, look, I'm as pro-life as they come. And I will always, always, always fight for the rights of preborn children. But in an election, people are looking for something along the line. They look at the economy. They look at what the position of the presidency is about first. And they see somebody like Kamala Harris, who says, I'm going to make sure everybody has a right to murder their own children. And that's going to cause people to recoil. You can't whip up a support base around that ideology. Maybe a small fanatical sect, but you're not going to appeal to a broad group of people, normal people who it's not even really on their mind. So for her to make that her number one agenda position, that's overreach. That's to say, we're going to go straight for the evil, and that's what we're going to grab for and make sure that that's the number one thing we're pushing.
Because here's what I get at. Spiritually, evil ultimately is irrationality.
Yeah.
So there becomes a point where it becomes so blind with your hatred for the good that you're not thinking straight.
Right.
The easiest example is an addict, right? An addict can know that something is completely wrong. It's destroying my body, but I'm going to keep taking this drug. Okay. The passion, the hunger for that evil is so, it's so strong that they make missteps. You saw that coming across, like you just said with some of those examples of the abortion or what they said.
The transgender issue too. I mean, she was pushing that hard. She was saying, look, we're going to make sure that men are going to be able to participate in women's sports. And we're going to make sure.
That makes no sense. If you're running to run office, even if you think that, shut your mouth and get yourself elected, right? Because, that's like that's what Trump said. I've never found someone who's actually in favor of men, playing in women's sports, right?
Right.
But they can't come to being able to just say that's wrong because it's an irrationality, right? So
she picked a running mate who made it part of his campaign when he was governor.
running mate was picked for her, and that's the whole point. You get that before. She's not the person. It was Barack Hussein Obama who's been behind this campaign, and whoever's behind Barack. That's the fact, right? We know this. Why he was campaigning down the wire for Kamala.
Sure,
he knew her term was shot.
But the overreach was even on his side too, because you had, what was his nickname? Tampon Tim. Why? Because he wanted to put tampons in boys' bathrooms. It's such a fringe thing. And the overreach, this is what I mean by overreach, is that they took a fringe ideology and they made it the central focus of their campaign. They took the most evil element of everything that the Democrats do, and they made it the central focus. And that's what overreach is. That I think is ultimately what pushed Trump over the edge, because they pushed that fringe ideology all the way to the front. And even the centrist Democrats who were looking at this were going, okay, you guys are insane. Okay, maybe I'm soft on this issue and I don't really care what happens with this kind of stuff, but you guys are nuts. And that pushed them over the edge, and that's why they went for Trump.
The truth is logical.
Yeah.
Logical reason. God is reason. The word became flesh, right? So that came across literally in the election. My final reason, my third reason of why I believe that Trump won is the Catholic effect. Okay. What you have here, and we'll leave that picture up there for a second. That picture kind of a snapshot of what we've been up to the past 8 months. And as I talk about this Catholic effect, it's not just Catholic for Catholics. It's a lot of different Catholic groups and Christian groups, but specifically the Catholic vote. We said from day one the Catholic vote would win, and we're going to get into that through an article from the Register on the stats of how Trump really won and what that looked like. But we really did see through the different initiatives from different groups how that had an effect. I mean, just a quick snapshot of what you see. You had obviously our Catholic prayer for Trump, which we did on March 19th. That was the one we kicked off our endorsement. We prayed the entire rosary there. Michael was there in attendance, and that really got us going. It consecrated Mar-a-Lago and the president and the whole mission to the Blessed Mother and St. Joseph. And then from there, we started doing other initiatives. We had our Masses for Trump, as we talked about, sending mass cards to Mar-a-Lago. Trump was aware of that. That triggered a letter from the president to Catholics for Catholics, thanking us for the work that we were doing. Then we were doing patriotic rosaries, right? Every single Sunday. That was Jesse Romero, a great idea that he had. And we put that into play, and different Catholic priests every Sunday that would pray the rosary. Fantastic idea. That got in the news, obviously, because of Marcus Allen, the guy we prayed it with, was kicked off this platform. Thankfully, the U.S. Congress came to our aid, sent a nice letter, and they had a friendly discussion, and this platform was kind enough to reinstate that rosary. But those rosaries had an effect. Then we had we launched our merch, our St. Michael billboards. We had 40 of those billboards in swing states. So literally millions and millions and millions of people were seeing St. Michael, the angel, the archangel who thwarts the evil one, right there. And Trump, who knows? Maybe he got the drip, but he posted St. Michael's prayer on St. Michael's feast day. We don't know that for sure, right? And there's other initiatives like this. I think Trump picked up on it, especially his Catholics. I hate to use the word conservative Catholic, but just Catholics of real Catholics were so supporting him and understood, while we did not by any means accept his position, IVF, abortion, whatever, we're very clear where we stand with that. We're not happy. We communicated that up the chain. But I think he understood that these guys are behind me. And by us showing the power of our faith, Trump also, got to love it. He told Raymond Arroyo himself, when Raymond asked him, "Hey, Trump, why'd you post those 3 pictures you see there? Michael, Mary's birthday, and All Saints." And Trump's comment was, honestly, because they're beautiful, right? Now, he had political reasons, I'm sure, to gain the Catholic vote, but there's a fraction of his heart which is like, this is beautiful stuff, because the truth, you mentioned via negativa, Michael, this is the via pulchritudinis, right? The way of beauty to God leads to God. Our faith does that. So there was a genuine Catholic effect, not only bringing our prayer power, but our brain power, people. It's prayer in action. And the ballot chasing and stuff initiatives like that really had an effect on the poll. And we carried those key swing states in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, where they're primarily the biggest voter bloc is our Catholics. Fair analysis of the Catholic effect, Michael. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things I want to point out, Catholic Vote said this: Fox News exit polls on Catholics state by state, and they said these numbers are eye-popping.
Yeah.
So in Pennsylvania, Catholic Vote in favor of Trump plus 14. Catholic Vote in favor of Trump in Michigan plus 20. Catholic Vote in favor of Trump in Wisconsin plus 16. In favor of Trump in Florida plus 29. In Nevada plus 6, in Georgia plus 7, and in North Carolina plus 17. So when you have numbers like that, you have to remember the Catholic vote represents 26% of the entire United States. It's roughly 1/4 of everybody in this country. Now, obviously, not all of them are voting. And then you also have the fact that 26% or 56% of that Catholic vote, so that's roughly, I would say it's 1/8 of the entire population of the United States. That's a large percentage.
Right.
That's a large percentage. So you have 1/8 of the population that cuts for Trump, and that's in various individual states. They are influencing those swing states. So what happened on the ground with Charlie Kirk and with you and all these active ways of trying to get out the Catholic vote specifically, and then also specifically in those swing states, I think it played a major role, and it's very important. Trump understood that. He saw that it was important to court the Catholic vote, and maybe that played a role in his decision to post things like wishing Our Lady a happy birthday, but there's a spiritual effect too. Our Lady will not forget that he wished her a happy birthday, whether he did it for political reasons or not. He did it. He didn't have to, but he did it.
There was a grace in and of itself for just doing that by the action.
You bet.
And I'm glad you mentioned Catholic Vote. Catholic Vote did some incredible work, just hammering some. They had some great ads this past cycle, talking about Kamala's just anti-Catholic stances. They articulated it extremely well in a great, about 20-page document. They, so kudos to them. You had Catholic leaders, from the pulpit to our, Strickland, of course, even Cardinal Burke's kind of resounding document, 3-page, which we covered right here. That was kind of a nail in the coffin to or an intellectual torpedo to the argument among Catholics that I'm going to sit out this election because no party's perfect. It just went right to the heart of that and destroyed it just when we needed that artillery help from above, right? So, and then you had Harrison Butker too, right? Night before the election, released that video endorsing Trump, like using the power. I mean, God bless Harrison Butker. I mean, because I think Harrison's a similar mindset. It's almost like I'm a star today, and I'm the who's who, and I'm probably the best kicker in the NFL right now, right? Mm-hmm. One injury, I'm done. That's it.
That's right.
And he understands a certain sense, like I have this position of notoriety. How am I going to use it? And that man is using it extremely well, right?
Nobody listens to a has-been.
True that. And so a combo. We flex our Catholic muscle, people, and let's go into the data of that. So article that we're going to use here to kind of wrap this second part of the show up comes from the National Catholic Register. Catholic voters favor Trump over Harris nationally and in swing state. Exit polls show Catholic vote on Tuesday broke for former President Donald Trump by a large margin statewide and within swing states in the 2024 presidential election. Here we go. How much did he win by? According to the Washington Post exit poll, Trump won the national Catholic vote. And look, we said from day one, he said, if you get the Catholic vote, it wasn't just a marketing ploy just to get people all excited about Catholic vote. It's legit. It's based on stats, okay? He won it by a 15-point margin, 56% to 41%. This shows a much larger victory for Trump among Catholic voters than the post-2020 exit polls, which had him winning 52 to 47%. Trump wins it by 5 points among Catholics in 2020. Fast forward 4 years, boom, up to 15. That is like the suicide pill for the opposition party. If you have that big of a swing among Catholic voters, especially when 26% of the state of Wisconsin is Catholics, you are going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
We did our work. We won this fight. All of us together. We teed this up. It was the Catholic effect on this election, which resulted in a large part for the victory. Thoughts on the article?
Well, I think that the article accurately articulates exactly what the Catholic vote was and where it played a precise role in the election. It's interesting that there was a little bit of a discrepancy between different polling stations. You know, the Washington Post had a different number from I think it was the AP or maybe it was Fox, but you had different number outcomes, but they all amounted to the same thing: is that Trump won the Catholic vote. He courted them, and we also have to take into consideration the fact that Kamala Harris actually came out against the Catholic Church. She did not show up for the Al Smith dinner. She in several of her discussions, I don't even call them interviews, in several her rambling discussions, she said things that were kind of knocking at the Catholic Church. You had Barack Obama campaigning at one of her rallies, giving a stump speech where he mocked the Ave Maria. Mm-hmm. So in this campaign alone with Kamala Harris, she was denigrating Catholics who otherwise would have supported her. So absolutely, the Catholic vote played a very large role demographically, but regionally, specifically in those swing states. I think that that's exactly where it was the most important for those Catholics to play a role. But now I think it's even more important for us to pay attention to what's going on with the bishops. Why are the bishops not standing up and properly catechizing Catholics? Why did 41% of Catholics knowingly vote for Kamala Harris? They knew what she stood for. Mm-hmm. She made abortion. She made transgenderism. She made homosexuality number one issues. She put them all the way up front. So there's no culpable ignorance on the part of any Catholic who voted for her. They knew exactly what she stood for, and they voted for her anyway. So this, I think, reflects very poorly on the bishops where those individual Catholics came from, because what it shows is that the bishops have failed to catechize, they have failed to teach, and quite honestly, their active support for Marxist ideologies is one of the things that has pushed those faithful Catholics, or who should be faithful Catholics, into Kamala's camp.
Completely agreed. There should have been a lot more statements from bishops that were akin to what Cardinal Burke put out. Just dead on clear, right?
You know, they didn't even have to talk politics. All they had to do was talk about morality, and they don't even do that. How many times do these bishops write letters saying abortion is extremely important? It kills a real living baby. When was the last time Cardinal Supich said anything even remotely close to that? Or Cardinal McElroy, or Cardinal Tobin, or, there's a huge list of bishops. I could go down the line. There are some who do, but by and large, these bishops have failed the Catholics in this country by not teaching and correcting error. They refuse to correct error. And that's really at the crux of the problem. So 41% Catholics who voted for Kamala Harris did so because they really liked her position on these immoral ideologies. And I blame the bishops for that.
It's extremely unfortunate. And it's, there's good news and bad news, what you just said, because the good news is, the bad news is like when you don't have the support of your bishops or whatever like that, it's like you're landing on D-Day or landing on Iwo Jima without air cover, right? You got no air support. When Cardinal Burke did that, we sent him a message thanking him privately for what that message was, and we literally put that comparison. It's like landing on Iwo Jima and having air support from your spiritual fathers to say, dead on. Keep it up. You got to vote this one, right? Because we were encountering Catholics or priests or whatever saying the opposite, right? So we need that. That's, the bad news is that we don't have that. The good news is that we can do a lot even without necessarily them being super strong. And I think a lot of Catholics, lay people understood their lay vocation, and we were speaking up and fighting for this, right? We didn't stop. So that's a blessing in disguise. And I think buried in some of these details of the stats, besides the Trump winning 15% among Catholics, did you see the part where it said Trump won 90% of voters who believe abortion should be illegal in all or most cases? And Harrison won 9% of voters who held that view. Let me translate. Essentially, if you hold the Catholic position on abortion in life, okay, Trump took 90% of those people.
Yeah. Yep.
She 9%. Right. So it's
and it's also that statistic goes along with the poll that came out last night, the exit poll, that said that only 11% of voters indicated that abortion was one of the reasons that they voted the way they did. It didn't. That particular exit poll was very interesting because it didn't indicate what position they were taking on abortion, just that abortion was a topic that they were concerned about.
What percentage was that?
What's that? 11%.
11?
Yeah, 11%.
11% of voters basically were like, I'm going to wake up this morning, I'm going to go vote because I'm caring so much about my abortion, correct?
Well, so that's how they interpreted it. So a lot of these pundits were out there talking, saying, oh, well, 11% of these voters, they thought abortion was a very important issue. So obviously they're going with Kamala Harris. But what your statistic just shows, that 90% of those who voted with regard to abortion did so because they were pro-life. Now you're putting that one statistic into a whole new light. So 90% of 11%, that's 9%. 9% of the people who put that as their top issue were voting for Trump. And so all the pundits who are putting that and saying that this statistic says that Kamala Harris has a big chunk of the people who are voting this way, that's not exactly what that meant. And so it goes along with the statistic where they're asking them about the economy, or how they felt about the economy or something along those lines. And so again, Kamala Harris had no position, really. She had no policy, no plan. She just said, oh, we're going to give out free money for people that want to buy a home. Isn't that going to be great? Well, wait a minute. How's that going to work? What's the program? What's the plan? She had none. But people were concerned about these things. How did the pundits interpret that concern? That's where things got a little stickier. But as we look at this in hindsight, we can say this is what that question meant to people. Not to the pundits who were analyzing the question at the time, but to the people who were going out and voting. And now we see those who voted with regard to abortion were concerned about abortion, not because they were trying to preserve an abortion for themselves, by and large, but because they wanted to prevent them. And that's what that statistic meant. It's a very interesting analysis once you break it down.
That is a great point, because it was made to seem, you talk about this number of ads, if you had to put it in statistics of what the Dems used to motivate their people, it was like 65, 70% of the ads in swing states were all about, like, go out and vote so that you can have the right to kill your baby.
Right.
Like, think about the absolute absurdity. Maybe in 30 years, we're going to look back and say, oh my gosh, what were we thinking? It's like looking back at 1864 or 65 and saying, hey, I'm running for, or 1860 rather, I'm running against Abraham Lincoln. And you got to, if you don't elect me, you're not going to have the right to have 5 slaves in your household, black slaves. Like, you got to have your slaves, And the Democrat convention of 1860, let's just make this up. They have a mobile facility right next to their DNC convention where it's like you could experiment what it's like to have a slave. Okay. Yep. I'm making the comparison, obviously, to the abortion truck that they had right outside DNC in blocks away from Cardinal Lubich's headquarters. Right. So it's insanity. It's insane that was what they were running on, the right to be able to give women the chance to terminate a life. Unreal. Back what you said about it's overreach, it's stupidity, it's irrationality, it is evil.
You know, I want to just to kind of touch on something a little bit similar, but off the topic just a little bit. I want to continue in the vein of statistics and demographics. I did some digging this afternoon because I was curious how Trump did in 2016 and 2020 in California and in New York. And one of the people in the comments here, Vicky Santiago, she said, here in California, we voted for Trump and we are Catholics. I want to make a point about this. In 2016, Donald Trump got 4.4 million votes, 31.5% of the California vote. In 2020, he got 6 million votes, 34.3% of the California vote. In 2024, he got 3.9 million votes. So he was down from 2020, but it was 40%. It was 40% of the vote because Harris only got 5.6 million people to vote for her. So what we're starting to see is a closing of the gap. Now, far less people voted in this particular election in California than voted in either 2016 or in 2020. But that margin was closing, and it's closing rapidly. It's almost to the point where you could see in a few years, if work done properly, California could flip. In New York, here's another trend. In 2016, Trump got 2.8 million votes. That was 36.7%. In 2020, Trump got 3.2 million votes. So that was 37.7%. But this year, Trump got 3.4 million, so a little bit more than last time, but it was 44.2% of the vote. So that gap got closed even tighter than in California. It was only within 1 million votes. Actually, it was 900,000 votes between Trump and Harris in New York. Yes, 900,000 votes. New York could have flipped. And in Virginia, my state, the margin was really, really thin. I didn't pull the same kind of numbers that I did.
Something like that. I remember last checking it. Virginia.
But it was razor thin. And I think there's a chance at this point. This is why it's imperative for your work, for the work that we do as Catholics. We have to look at this 4 years now, not as we got it, we escaped. Okay. No, this is 4 years of hard work that we have got to put out there. And the hard work has got to be conversion and penance, because this country is guilty of a multitude of sins. We are the #1 exporter in the world of pornography. We are one of the top practitioners of abortion in the world. So in this country alone, we've got blood on our hands, and we've got the souls of billions of people on our hands. We also have a military industrial complex that is bent on fomenting war after war after war overseas. So we have a very serious problem in this country when it comes to a national sin. And yes, nations do get judged. It happens all the time. Just look in scripture, look in throughout history, nations do get judged. This nation just got a 4-year reprieve, and we should look at it the same way the Ninevites looked at their time. They were given a reprieve. Their punishment wasn't ended. They did get destroyed eventually, but for the time being, we have a reprieve. Use the time wisely. Use it to make reparations, to do penance, and to go out and convert the hearts and minds of our neighbors, because that is where we are going to be able to start changing the direction of this country and, please God, avert disaster.
Taking that further, we're going to go on offense. We are absolutely going on. And no, we're not waiting until the first of the year to plan for 2028. First of all, we got to get President Trump in office. Because like we said at the beginning of the show, this is not done. They're not just going to hand us the car keys and say,
right,
shucks, you guys ran a great campaign. We'll see in 4 years or 2 years in the midterms. They are going to push so hard, and God only knows what they got up their sleeves. Okay, so we're going to prayer in action, and we've got to take this further. Okay, the RNC platform currently, as it stands, is not acceptable. That's on us Catholics. We've got to evangelize. Okay, we got to make our case. We have to be able to articulate reasons for our faith, as St. Peter asks us to do in the New Testament. Right. So it's just beginning. I have to, at this point, we've got to take a break and give a nod, a salute to the woman who did more for this race than any other woman. Okay. She was the activist par excellence in what she did for this country. And I'm so glad that this activista, as they would say in Spanish, feminine form, was honored by President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. So we're going to play a song to that activista. And as you listen to that word of that song, I invite you to say a prayer of thanksgiving for what our Blessed Mother did for America in these past months. Play clip 2.
Again, I would like to ask everyone to join me in a moment of silence.
Final word, Michael.
What can anybody say after that? I don't have anything.
There are no words. This show is called Catholic Champion. It's not because we want to be champions. It's because it refers to the place where Blessed Mother appeared in Wisconsin, Our Lady of Champion, approved by the church. We're just trying here at Catholics for Catholics to be instruments like Maximilian Kolbe was of Our Lady, because she's mediatrix of all graces. All graces flow through her. They don't originate from her. They really flow through her as mediatrix. And with her, we are going to make this country great. We really, really are. This is the Catholic moment, people. Wake the heck up. This is our chance, okay? It's a great opportunity. We are just taking advantage of the political situation here to evangelize. That's what we get up every single day to do. And with your help and your support and your activism, we're going to do this. Thank you all. We will see you next week, same time, same channel. This is Catholic Champion. God bless and fight on.